Hello, welcome to the live SCM talk show about trends in supply chain. My name is Martijn Lofvers. I'm Chief Trend Watcher of Supply Chain Media, and you might also know me as the Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Movement. In Dutch, we have a saying, howling with wolves in the forest, meaning repeating each other to get some advantage, but maybe you're not agreeing what you're saying. So that's what we see right now, a lot of talking about trends, and maybe people repeat each other. But now we want to dig deeper this afternoon. In supply chain, we talk about cause and effect, so we want to have deep knowledge of what's happening in the world. So that's what we're going to address this afternoon. And I have four speakers, experts joining me at the table later on, and we talk about what's happening in the world, and especially in supply chain. We talk about wolves as an analogy and why, as a species, the wolves are the most similar to humans. They have social interactions, social groups, a hierarchy, and different kind of leadership. So in the next 90 minutes, you will see some more wisdom from wolves we can use as humans. So we're going to talk about different topics, from the high to the very low. So we'll talk about trends, we talk about resilience, we talk about execution, last mile, especially about communication and alignment, and also how to address your colleagues in supply chain to make some sense of this world. So we have, as I said, four experts joining me at the table. But first, we're going to talk about the world happening, and we're going to talk about trend watching. So as a biologist, supply chain media is looking at trends, and we're watching all the kind of trends and happenings in the world. So it's quite a disturbing world in the last 2 years, I would say. And but some things might be expected, and some things are not to be expected. So here you see an overview of the phrases of CEOs and CFOs talking about all kinds of trends during calls with the quarterly earnings. So this overview is based on all the wordings being said by CEOs and CFOs during their calls, what's happening in the world. And as you can see, there's an economic slowdown. You see it in the upper right corner. And to the right, you see a lot of CEOs talk about supply chain. And they talk about uncertainty. And of course, they talk about inflation. And it's good to see that, there are, in this world, we are playing in as supply chain professionals, and more supply chain is on the agenda of the boardroom leaders. And of course, you see also invasion of Ukraine, the war in Ukraine is on that list of phrases. But as supply chain professionals, and especially supply chain media, we want to dig deeper to make some sense of what is happening in the world. So as you can see here, we created an overview of ripple effects of major events in the supply chain in the world. So on the lower left side, you see COVID-19 happening early 2020. And as a result of that, there were lockdowns in factories, lockdowns at home. So lockdowns at home were causing a huge rise in e-commerce. But lockdowns in factory meant shortages. So there is a lack of supplies, and there was a lot of shortages. And as a result of that, in the end, the prices were rising, fuel prices were going up, and there was already talking about inflation in the late 2021. And now you see a decline. Stores are opening up, and you see a decline in e-commerce, and even Amazon just announced a layoff of a huge amount of people. Not in the warehouse, but in general. So you will see, I wouldn't say the bubble of e-commerce has burst, but it's not an endless growth anymore. And now we talk about recession coming up, possibly, and what we saw last year, war in Ukraine in February 24th. And of course, the war in Ukraine has all kinds of impacts in business. You see a lack of gas supplies, and now it's hitting the global economy. Some people might say that the war in Ukraine was a black swan, but it wasn't. The NATO already played out different kind of scenarios in the fall of 2021. And this slide is showing a slide of different kind of scenarios. And as you see on the top of this slide is from early February of 2022. The wargaming community created this slide of scenarios already before it was happening. So it was amazing to see that the wargaming community, these are former military people or enthusiasts playing war games. They already created this slide with all kind of different scenarios. So for them, it was no surprise at all that Russia invaded Ukraine. So as you see here, that it was no surprise for the wargaming community. It was no surprise for NATO. But even the wargaming community accelerated very rapidly. And this was a slide of March last year. And as you can see, this scenario thinking has evolved. And you can see the invasion and occupation in the middle, starting out all kind of effects. And you see down these bubbles explaining what could happen next. And you see the likelihood of all kind of consequences happening next. And this kind of thinking is now getting into companies. Now I'm talking to companies who are applying this way of thinking, of scenario building, for their own sake. So what will be happening if China might invade Taiwan? That kind of thinking. So this kind of thinking has evolved in the last year based on what's happening in Ukraine, sadly enough, but it's a sign that people should think differently. And we're going to talk also with 4 experts later on, but we did a survey among chief supply chain officers of global companies, of multinationals, and we asked them what are the 2 major trade-offs and mega trends happening in this world. And last year, number 1, digitalization was clearly the main mega trend impacting the business. But now we see things changing. A year later, and you see the second bar, that's the orange, that's this year, the results. Now sustainability and scarcity of materials, that's the main issue on the long term. So the chief supply chain officers see scarcity of raw materials and sustainability as an adjacent topic, as the main megatrend impacting their business on the long term. And that's good to see how that is happening, because all this strategic thinking also implies that the leaders should need different kind of skills. And another question we did in the same survey among the chief supply chain officers was, what are the 2 major important skills for supply chain leaders today? And the number 1 was resilience and scenario building. That's number 1. And the second one is strategic thinking and transformation thinking. So what does it all imply for your business as a whole, and how should you change? And the third one, also very important, is strategic execution and alignment. Do we know what's happening, and do all my colleagues know, or all my partners in the supply chain know what's happening, and how are we going to transform and change in all this? So these are the things happening right now, and this is what we saw in the market. And these are the points I would like to discuss with some experts at the table. All right. So next, we talk about resilience. You see here the wolves struggling through the snow. And, when it's quite sluggish to move forward, the wolves will know that the strongest wolf will head the pack to get through the snow. And that's the way how to deal with this sluggish economy, or this winter for the wolves. All right. Next, I have here Eric Dix. He's partner of Chainalytics. And Chainalytics is a supply chain consultancy firm in Europe. And maybe, Eric, you can explain, you have different offices. Maybe you can talk a bit briefly about Chainalytics, heritage, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Martijn. Yeah, so Chainalytics is a company that was founded in 2001 in the US by Mike Kilgore. And it has been growing since then. Right now we have 250 supply chain professionals around the world. And I'm happy to lead the European side of that, where we have around 37 supply chain professionals. And what we are trying to do is really help companies with increasing their maturity, getting more value out of their current supply chains.
So I know you do all kind of services, also forecasting as a services, but also supply chain projects, implementations. And you have different offices all over Europe. Am I correct?
That's right. So in Europe we have teams in Finland, in Italy, in the Netherlands, and those people are focusing on different parts of the supply chain. So we call it competencies. So three major kind of competencies that we are focusing on is helping clients with their planning, improving demand and supply matching, helping them with their footprint, optimizing distribution, footprint, manufacturing footprint to determine where do you need to have your DC, how many DCs do you need to have, what should be the scope of a DC, the capacity of a DC. And the third one is transportation. How do you organize the transportation between all these different facilities in a good kind of way? What kind of transportation modes do you need to have? What is a good price to pay for transportation? So those are kind of the three pillars here in Europe.
And the last pillar is also about, you gather all kind of data from carriers and what are the costs to track down what companies are paying and if they could save some money by changing their lanes or whatever.
Yeah, so we have access, and that we are the founder of Freight Market Intelligence Consortium. And that consortium gathers all the data around what is the price that companies are paying for freight, and how much should they pay for freight, given kind of the characteristics of the transport.
And especially in the last year, these prices are changing rapidly.
Yes.
Dramatically.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you take a look to the transportation out of Asia. I think there the container prices have been kind of skyrocketing, and there we've seen kind of multiples, and therefore also companies started to kind of think about, do we need to change? Do we need to change our footprint? Do we need to change our kind of inventory policies? How do we address with this kind of very strongly changing environment? And that's why probably also supply chain resilience is kind of on the top of the list in order to kind of deal with these changing environments.
And if you look at this slide, it's about building a more resilient supply chain.
Yeah.
So you have different kind of levels. Maybe you can explain how to read this slide.
Yeah, so I think in order to build more resilience, you need to take a look at the different kind of layers in your supply chain. So first of all, it's around doing the right things. What do I mean with that? Is having the right infrastructure, focusing on the right products, the right customers, having the right inventory policies. So making sure that you are kind of focused on the right thing. But that's not the only thing. The other layer is the things that you are doing, you also need to do in a very good and efficient way. So doing the things right. Mm-hmm. And so there you see that planning is a very important process in order to enable, for example, the scenario analysis that you were talking about. Companies, when there's a lot of change, they would like to know, okay, how can I optimize supply chain? Mm-hmm. That requires running those scenarios, and therefore you need data, and you need to have a good kind of planning systems in order to do that. I think, during the last 2 years, it became more and more a trend, known that, companies were struggling with that, struggling with kind of running the scenarios, having the right data accuracy, and so therefore they started kind of saying, okay, we need to start improving our maturity on the planning side. We need to have a good demand planning and supply planning process. How can we improve that? How can we improve the technology, the processes, and kind of our people? And there we've seen a lot of companies starting to kind of doing that journey. But it's not easy to go from, say, an immature planning system to immediately to kind of a very mature planning system. So.
And you also mentioned here a control tower. It has been a bit of a buzzword in the last 5 years. So how can you explain to put it there in the slide?
Yeah, so I think a control tower is kind of the way to take a look. What is the impact of the decisions that I'm taking? So what you want to see, of course, is if you run your scenarios, what is the impact on service level? What's the impact on capacity? What is the impact on cost? And you want to do that in a simple way that will help you to drive changes in your supply chain. And like you said, sustainability is a new one that is also more and more important. And so also we've seen now clients saying to us, let's not only try to optimize the footprint from a cost perspective or from a service level perspective, but let's also try to reduce the CO2. And so let's take a look at, can we change transportation modes and get more rail involved instead of trucks, so as to reduce CO2.
So the control tower should also address this kind of cost thinking and carbon thinking and compare it and to make better decisions in both ways.
Absolutely, yes.
And I was wondering, on a strategic level, there's a lot of talk about reducing complexity, but I don't hear that much that companies are looking at their portfolios. SKUs were growing massively in the last decades, so the catalogs were getting bigger and bigger. What do you see in that area of reducing complexity by better segmentation and a portfolio reduction?
Well, I still see that there's a big opportunity there for companies to get closer in understanding their product profitability and their customer profitability. With respect to kind of optimizing the product portfolio, we've seen quite some interesting kind of things. So when COVID hit, some companies kind of said, we need to reduce our portfolio significantly because otherwise we're not going to be able to deliver. There are too many changeovers in our manufacturing sites, and so in the US we saw shrinking product portfolios. But on the other hand, you also see that customers are getting more demanding. You see a lot of customization in the product portfolio. So there's also a kind of a drive to kind of more SKUs. And then the big question, of course, is how can I do that without changing the complexity in such a way that my cost also increase? So I see kind of the two different kind of movements go on. But what is important, I guess, is getting clarity on how does complexity translate into cost. And there I still see some road ahead of us.
Yeah, and basically, there's a need to have a better cost to serve insights.
Yep.
So you have to, you have to do your ABC cost analysis on one hand, but on the other hand, you see also the drives, like you said, that companies are forced to reduce the portfolio, like Daimler-Benz only producing the high-end vehicles with more margin and don't selling the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
But when we look ahead, and there was also mentioned by the chief supply chain officers, because of the scarcity of materials, you have to make some choices. So even the marketing and sales people should be aware of the scarcity, that they should look at their portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear a lot of my clients also dealing with this kind of scarcity of materials. I think there also the big problem is that 1 week there's scarcity on one material, and the next week it's on another material. And what makes it very difficult is that not always the visibility is that great about which is the material that's going to hit me next week or in 2-3 weeks from now. So also, again, coming back to kind of the scenario analysis, being able to kind of translate what does a scarcity in a certain material mean for my finished products, and how do I address my key customers and make sure that I'm making the right decisions.
So a year ago, especially in the US, there were a lot of articles with the headline going from just in time to just in case. And as a result, all kind of buyers were buying all the stock they could get. And as a result, now we see all the warehouses are full of inventory, and most of the times not the wrong ones. So they were, there was a supply shortage, so they were buying the lot. And then later on, demand fell down, and now you see a lot of companies with overstocked warehouses. So what is the implication of that? What do companies do? Not just go from just in time to just in case, but what are the main alleyways to follow to prevent that you have the wrong stock and wrong raw materials?
Yeah, well, I think it's one is of course on the demand side to better understand, you know, what is going to be the orders that we need to fulfill in the next coming periods. So improving the quality of the forecast is still, I would say, an important element. Companies are still struggling, and still a lot of companies are just taking a look at what did I do last year around this time, or what was my last month looking like, and kind of using that. Well, that is not sufficient anymore. There are better ways to do that, and so that's one thing where companies are getting smarter now in using statistical forecast, and even I would say the best the best kind of companies in this area are kind of also taking a look at machine learning and artificial intelligence. But then also on the supply side, creating that visibility, I think that's also what I'm hearing a lot. Like the scarcity of materials is hitting us, whereas we could have known it if we had kind of better visibility of what's going on with our suppliers. So also that's something that we see a lot, that a lot of companies are now focusing on. How can we improve that visibility towards suppliers?
And in this slide, you also mentioned the shorter term or the execution operational area and the planning side. So Chainalytics is also helping out companies implementing supply chain planning software from Blue Yonder, O9 Solution, and iPlan. Can you tell me about the experience? Because you just mentioned machine learning and AI. How do you apply this machine learning AI, and how do you know that companies are mature enough to apply it?
Well, what we see there is that you need to tailor your approach towards the maturity where a company is in, and so we typically call about crawl, walk, run, where when a company is kind of changing from Excels to a technology like Blue Yonder or O9. It's not the first thing that you're going to kind of implement AI ML. Some companies really like to do that, but it's not the right way. You first need to kind of make sure that you have a working process, that you're kind of also using the intelligence which is in the heads of the sales people, and so AI ML is something that more comes in kind of step 2 or step 3, definitely not in step 1, and that's also what kind of we're doing now with our clients, is kind of focusing on going through in these different steps. And also, to be honest, if you have a very well tailored statistical forecasting technique, usually that works better than AI and ML. In order for AI ML to kind of outperform these traditional, well kind of tuned techniques, requires more data and the right data. So you need to then think about what are additional data sources that we can use, which are also relevant for the forecasting process that we can use. And that's definitely not trivial.
And you also mentioned in a pre-call we had, you know, you're implementing O9 solution in the seed industry, and that you created a template to have a better and a quicker implementation.
Yeah, definitely. So I think industries are not the same in terms of the types of challenges that they have. So we're doing several implementations right now in the seed industry, and in order to kind of tackle that, we've developed an industry template within O9 in order to not develop everything from scratch, and use that template to implement more quicker. But also, I think companies appreciate that, kind of seeing like, hey, we're not starting from scratch. We're using the knowledge that is already in the template in a prescribed way, without developing it from scratch. And
probably these companies are recognizing that you understand their business, you are talking their language.
Yeah, that is very important, because well, in the seed industry, there are very specific kind of constraints that you need to address. To give you an example, if you grow a certain seed in a company and you want to deliver it to a customer in another country, then there can be constraints that if it's grown in one country, you cannot deliver it to another country. And so there can be a lot of restrictions. So just taking a look at inventory is not really helping you, because you need to know where is this inventory built of, where is it coming from, and so also you need to know where is it going to. So there's a lot of complexity there. And also the granularity is quite different from what you typically see in the industry. So here, if you're talking about forecast, you need to know the forecast for the next 4 or 5 years. So how many vegetables, tomatoes, and other crops are you going to sell? Quite difficult to kind of get to know that. But yeah, you have to do it, because at the end you're talking about a product that you cannot just increase. You need to take a decision, grow that crop, and then hopefully it's matching with your predictions.
Another thing, and we see it in the next slide, you mentioned that you have created a game on the matter of supply chain network design. Can you explain a bit what it's like and why you did it?
Yeah, so what we've experienced is that it's very important to optimize the network and to optimize the footprint. And I think many of our direct clients, supply chain directors, understand what it means. But at the end, the supply chain directors also need to work with their commercial counterpart, with their marketing counterpart, with their financial counterpart. And they usually are not immediately kind of understanding what does it mean to optimize a supply chain from an infrastructure point of view. And and we were experiencing that as well as a consultant when talking to our clients, that sometimes it's very difficult to give an impression on what does it take to optimize a supply chain, and what are the different trade-offs, because you're talking about cost, CO2, service level, capacities. There are a lot of different factors in there. So yeah, we've developed a supply chain network design game that allows people to play this in 1.5 to 2 hours, to really build a network themselves, to see what is the impact on cost, on service level, on capacities. Yeah, so far, yeah, we're hearing a lot of good things. People start to understand that it's more difficult than they initially thought. Getting understanding of the different trade-offs that are there. But also, yeah, it's also a lot of fun, and I guess playing a management game usually helps a lot in getting an understanding in a very nice way. So we're kind of doing this now with our clients, but also we're kind of using this now to show to the market, you know, what is possible in this area. And we'll also be having a webinar shortly where we are going to play this with whoever is interested in getting to know what is a network design all about. And
the supply chain professionals probably in the audience will know that way back it was just, you know, when you are working with LlamaSoft and supply chain network design, it was a very specialized job and very difficult to do that, you know. And now you created something that's more tangible and probably more digestible for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
But with how many people are you going to play that? Are you playing against each other? Are you playing against a computer? Playing against a competitor?
No, so it's we can play it with say 10 people. I think we played it one time with 60 people. That's quite a lot. But I would say kind of the sweet spot would be around 20, 30 people, and then we divide the people into groups, and so there's also a little bit of an element of competition in there as well, to see who can build the best supply chain. We're playing several rounds. and every round there's a different type of complexity. And at the end of every round, we're kind of taking a look at who's kind of winning, who has the best kind of service level, cost. And we have played it kind of on-site, also with universities being on-site, having people in the room playing with their own laptop, but we have also played it just remote, and people calling in and becoming part of a team, which is nowadays much easier with kind of Zooms where you can, and Teams where you can kind of build these groups.
It's good to know that you can play this kind of games and play out these scenarios I discussed earlier in a military way, but then now in supply chain way.
Yes.
Eric, thanks for joining us. Thank you for explaining me, and we'll stay in touch about the game, and maybe we'll play it myself in the near future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have another expert joining me, and we talk about execution. And if you talk about execution in terms of wolves, young wolves are playing and training and practicing stalking and killing prey and learning how to join socially in the pack. So it's all about playing and training yourself. And next to me, Jeroen Schepers. He's partner of Involvation, a supply chain boutique consultancy. Also, you are the initiator of the Fresh Connection. Yes. A sister company in Change has developed it, but you're all from the same pack, I would say. So maybe you can explain a bit about the Fresh Connection and the heritage about it. A lot of companies, I think that 250 universities are playing this game worldwide.
Yeah, it's existing now for 10 years. We developed it with Involvation, and now it's what you said, a separate company. And it's very successful. It's played all over the world with a lot of universities, but also in a lot of companies worldwide. And we play it in company. But there is also a global competition where teams can play against each other. And they have to manage a company and make all the kind of trade-off decisions. Yeah.
So basically, my team has played themselves a few years ago. You have a team of 4 with different kind of roles.
Yes.
And you are managing a fruit juice company.
Yes, you have 4 roles, sales, supply chain, operations and purchasing. And with your team, you have to make all kind of business decisions. And you can play a lot of teams, a lot of topics you can discuss in the game, like decision making, like strategy, KPIs, etc., etc., team building. And as Eric also said, it's a lot of team building and it's also some competition between different teams. So that's great to play.
And also with this game, you can play out sales and operations process. What kind of decisions you have to make?
For example, your VP sales has to make all kind of decisions with your customers about service levels, lead times, etc. And that has an impact on your operations and on your machinery and on your equipment and on your shifts. That also impact on the supply chain, of course, with all the inventories, etc. And
So basically, you are doing different kind of jobs, have different kind of service lines. You're doing software selection on supply chain planning, like the Fresh Connection, training, but also on resilience. Yes. A new topic, and we will discuss it right here. So you developed together with the Supply Chain Movement, one of our titles, a mind map. Can you explain, you see it here, there are 4 elements, 4 quadrants, I would say, with the resilience. Can you explain how to resilience in your opinion?
Yeah, because every company nowadays knows there has to be resilient. I don't know any company that hasn't resilience in the strategy. But the big question is, of course, how? Where do you start? And that's why we, together with you, your company, we designed the mind map. And it has 4 topics, charters, angles, how you call it. And the first one is your supply chain design. Who are your tiers? Who are your suppliers, your customers, your partners? You really have to be inside in that. What's your supply base like? That's the first angle. And the second angle is about collaboration. How do you work together within your own company, but also in your end-to-end chain. But also some intelligence. You have to know what's happening in your upstream and downstream supply chain. The third one is about behavior. At the end, it's all about people in the supply chain. And the fourth one is about agility. How do you design your buffer management? How do you work with complexity, et cetera, complexity reduction, for example. Yeah.
So in this mind map, and people can download it online at our website, supplychainmovement.com. There are a lot of phrases. So like in agility, you have your DDMRP and all kind of very specific topics. So it's all in there. Yeah. It's like howling with the wolves is, resilience. Everybody is talking about it. And the next question, how many companies are really working on it?
Yeah, a lot of companies are talking about it, but really I know quite some companies who pick some topics from resilience. And that's why the mind map is so interesting, because then you can look for your own company. What are the relevant topics for my company? Where am I strong in, and what can be improved? And then you can make a plan where to start, how to start. Because you have to cut the elephant in pieces. Otherwise, it's too broad and too big, and then it has no success. And that's also why we developed a monitor, a resilience scan, together with the University of Groningen and Windesheim, where we, as a company, you can fill in the scan online, supplychainresilience.org. And then you can see where you are, how good or how bad you are on certain topics, and you can compare that with other companies, with your peers. So it's very exciting.
So when did you launch this checklist, or what is it?
Yeah, actually it is launched from beginning of this year, and quite some companies already filled in the scan. So we are now gathering all kind of data, and together with the university we do some analysis, and we publicate also the results.
Okay.
It's going to be very exciting. Yeah.
Good to track. One of your colleagues has written a blog also on our website about resilience is about a lifestyle. Yeah. So people, some persons will get a heart attack and they have to change their way of living.
Yeah.
So how do you compare having a heart attack and then moving into the area of resilience?
Yeah, maybe you can compare it with overweight, for example. I'm not sure, but it's maybe not so difficult to do something about your weight. Well, it's difficult, but it's doable. But the real challenge is to stay on that weight. And that's the same with companies. Okay, you can pick one or two topics from resilience and work on it and become very good in it. But then you have to stay at a good level. And that's why also behavior, culture, leadership is very, very important. And I know a couple of companies who are quite good in it, but they have strong leadership. And that's, I think, very important.
If you could compare a company as a body, and with its body has overweight, the whole body, the whole company has to be aligned. Otherwise, the whole body stays on overweight.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be good in your mind. Physically, you have to be in shape, but you have to find a way to keep in shape. And I think that's the same with resilience. And I think it's very important to mention that for every company, resilience is something different, I believe. That it depends on your situation, on your maturity, on the market where you're in. So that's why you have to be very... know what you're doing, and that's why a scan or a mind map is so important to get a good plan and a good strategy to work on it.
I can imagine, especially now, you hear a lot about burnout, especially in supply chain. A lot of planners, the last 2 years have been rough, and they're still in a sluggish economy, and it's still not going like before COVID. So the mental health is also a part to be in it matter to stay resilient.
Yeah, I really believe that, because that's why you have to look at it from a holistic point of view. Not try to sometimes improve the forecast, for example. Yeah, that's not doable sometimes anymore. So you can try to fix that, but maybe you have to do something else. Yeah. Maybe you have to reduce some complexity. Maybe you have to do something about your collaboration, about your buffer management, about some design in your chain. So, yeah, you have to do the right things, especially in an environment that's so challenging nowadays.
Another visual we have created together with the Innovation is the SNOP subway map about sales and operations planning. It's all about the process, the different steps you have to take, and which departments are involved. And I think especially, SNOP has been, quite hot in the last 5 years as a topic, and also in software matters. But this visual is very helpful to explain all the different steps in the decision-making process.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, it's a part of resilience, I believe, the whole sales and operations planning, because, also resilience is all about making trade-off decisions. And the way how you do that, you have to manage that. You have to organize, to structure that in your company. And the subway map also helps because you have different levels of SNOP, I would say. You have the integrated business planning with the whole financial impact. You have the sales and operations planning part on the mid horizon, but also sales and operations execution. And I think all 3 layers you have to organize in your company. And with the subway map, you can look, okay, what is my goal? What do I want to realize? What are my objectives? And who needs to be on the table? What kind of decisions do I have to make? On what horizon? And then you can organize your process around it. So for the more operational part, executional part, you need a sales and operations execution process. More on the short-term horizon.
But it's good with this visualization. Actually, you have this whole process on one page, and you can check if everybody is on the same page. Are we discussing the same step in the process? It's a monthly cycle, and with weekly meetings, and maybe you have to speed up. Maybe you have to have a different cycle on sales and operation execution. But this kind of visualization is especially useful for the communication internally. Do we have the right process? Do we make the right decisions?
I think so. And what I see in a lot of companies during the whole COVID crisis, they really were focusing on allocation. And that was good, because that was needed at that time. But now they have to make the step to also the more tactical level, and really change some things. And you don't have to. It's not good to mix those 2 processes up. You have to have a good sales and operations execution process, and besides that, you have to need a sales and operations planning process or an integrated business planning process.
Talking about that, we have created a visualization of what we call the planning tower, and we call it the convergent planning tower. It's a T-shaped tower. It looks like this, and basically it's a stack of all kind of processes, but also a stack of different kind of IT system. It started on the first floor with your ERP, where you have your administration of sales orders, and the second floor you have your sales and operation execution. But that's a mixed bag of all kind of systems of order management, warehouse management, transport management, production management. So that's one thing. So I think SNOE is not available as a clear package. Then on the third floor you have your SNOP, your sales and operations planning, where you have your midterm matching supply and demand, mostly on volume. And your IBP, the long-term financial gap closing with your decisions on what to do next, and hopefully in euros and dollars explained. And on the top layer you have your end-to-end planning, where you look at the market with demand side, and also the market on the supply side, and there you see the scarcity of material. If you look at this control tower or the planning tower, I would say, where do you see the most of the attention looking for solutions?
It's quite difficult to have a good planning system on all the planning layers, I think, and that's a big challenge. Sometimes the companies have the same planning system for the executional level and the tactical level. And that's difficult, I believe. But I think there is a lot of developments nowadays also in software. And by the way, the most difficult thing is that it has a different aggregation level. On the executional level, it's all about articles, stock keeping units, the lowest detail level. But on the more tactical and strategical level, you don't need all the details. And so you need another way of planning, another way of working with data, and also integrate your assumptions and your business drivers. It's another way of forecasting. And that's, I think there are quite some developments. But you don't have to, must mix them up on the executional level and the tactical level.
Good point. Jeroen, thank you for joining me. Thank you for explaining how we did the visualization on resiliency in the mind map and SNOP on the supply map. So we'll expect a lot about your resilience check and see what we can get out of that on the maturity on that level. So thanks a lot. And we're going to move over to the next level. Really, we go drill down on the last mile. It's about execution. Here you see a pack of wolves approaching the prey. And there are buffaloes waiting there. But the wolves know what to do, how to approach their prey. And that's what we're going to discuss with me. With me, I have Pieter van der Hoven. He's CEO and founder of Store Shippers. To explain why he's here, Store Shipper was the winner of the European Supply Chain Scale-Up Contest last year. And as you see here in the slide, Supply Chain Media has created an overview of all kinds of supply chain startups. We did an analysis of over 250 supply chain scale-ups and startups in Europe. And from the left side, you start up with supplier management, and we have 10 categories and all the way down to the last mile. And in the last mile, you will find store shippers among some others. Pieter, welcome. Here we have some more information about, well, of course, you have won our European Supply Chain Startup Contest, or Scale-Up Contest, I would say, with our Innovate Supply Chain win last year. But you have some more prizes won.
Yeah, well, the Innovate, of course, was our proudest moment so far. Martijn, you can imagine that.
Okay.
No, but it was really, it was a really nice event you hosted. I think it was the biggest stage I've been on so far, so it was a bit scary, but I guess it was successful because we were voted from the public as a winner. So that was great. So what we tried to participate in, of course, is in sustainability prices, last mile prices, because of our business, we try to do things a little bit differently, especially with a lot of attention for the environment, because that's also a personal mission for me.
Maybe to explain basically what your proposition is and why you have won. Well, we saw a lot of increase in e-commerce in the last 2 years, especially with the lockdown, and so you came up with a solution to service retailers.
Yeah, exactly. So Store Shippers is an omni-channel logistics platform. And what we try to do is we try to help retailers and merchants to creating just an awesome experience out of last mile. Mm-hmm. How do we do that? We connect them to a network of more localized shipping companies that do things a bit differently. So they do their deliveries faster, like within 60 minutes or same day. They do it greener with different modes of transportation, like cargo bikes, electric vehicles, and they also do it more flexible. So locker delivery, scheduled delivery, selecting a specific time slot, and all ways that that you can distinguish yourself from the traditional carriers that often are locked in their own technology, and just creating an awesome customer experience. So we created a network around that because what we see is the complexity of international retailers, that if they want to do this, work with these more localized companies, then that's an integration nightmare right there. Mm-hmm. So we did that for them, actually, created a platform where we have integrated all these local companies, we harmonized all shipment statuses, and we offer that to the markets via a single API. We have a network now in 15 countries. So yeah, any retailer with a lot of stores in a lot of countries can help us. We initially started out as a ship from store platform. That was quite well timed, I must say, with Corona. It was also a little bit lucky, to be honest, because we were ready in the midst.
So the stores were closed, and
Yeah,
but they
exactly.
were open from shipping from the stores.
Exactly, yeah. So all stores were closed. DCs were overloaded with the boom in e-commerce, and the stores exactly the opposite thing, right? They had a lot of stock in the stores. No one could touch them, and they had people working in the stores that could be used more efficiently. So that's what we created, a network that you can ship from store. Just picking up the products at the store and shipping them to customers that are in the vicinity of the couriers. And that way, yeah, what I like about that model is that you shorten the last mile.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of shipping something hundreds of kilometers, sometimes even across countries, you just say, no, I have the item in my local store just a couple hundred meters out. And that just creates a totally different experience. First of all, because it's faster, but also because you can do it more sustainable. And lastly, because the people in the store, they are a little bit different, right? So
Yeah.
how you get the parcel is like really bringing that store experience where the retailer puts so much effort in with the smells, with the sound, with the uniforms. You bring that experience to the doorstep of the customer. Our couriers can deliver in the normal original shopping bag, and you see, just a couple of hours after your purchase moment, and you see that the people in the stores, they write a personal message on the bag, and it's an awesome experience.
So I know it from Rituals, originally a Dutch cosmetics company with their own stores, and they use it, and they deliver it the products online in a Rituals bag,
Exactly.
in a similar way when you go into the store and then buy it over there.
Yeah, exactly.
And the last few months there was a lot of publications, especially in the Netherlands, that buying e-commerce is more sustainable than going into the stores. And I object because, they were not taking into account that when you have an e-commerce footprint, it's threefold compared to the traditional one with the stores. So with the stores you go into with pallets, and when you have e-commerce, you have boxes and even smaller boxes. Bulk down is typically different. But in your way, you are having a hybrid model of using, the more efficient and probably a lower carbon footprint to get the stuff in the store.
Yeah.
And then the last mile, it will be more carbon friendly because you have bike couriers delivering at your home.
Exactly. So just if you look at the box, you have them at home as well, Martijn. You have ordered like an item that's this big, and then there's a lot of air and a lot of filling material in the box, and it just doesn't make sense. And so, indeed, then just using a local product makes so much more sense in every way. It's from a sustainability perspective, but also from a customer experience perspective.
So what you're stating here in the slide is that delivery is becoming a competitive edge.
Yeah, that's what I really believe in, and I mentioned it before. So, and I also mentioned in the interviews before, like I'm not. You present me as an expert in logistics, but I'm actually not. I'm actually relatively new here, probably with the least experience in logistics here, because I'm just been around in this business for 2.5 years. Come from mostly from a tech background. But what surprises me is that logistics seems to be all about cost. And I think, especially in the last mile perspective, it should be treated as a value driver, because it's the last touch point with your customer.
Yeah.
So make that a beautiful one, and don't destroy it trying to save, what is it, like 50 cents? It doesn't make sense to me. And I think in the coming years, delivery will be the thing to distinguish yourself with your competitors. And that's because all the rest is already figured out quite well. And I'm surprised that if you look into a checkout of a retailer, there are 15 ways to pay, but there's only one way to get your parcel at home.
Yeah.
Why not let your customer decide how they want to have it delivered?
Yeah.
And why not give them that choice? And I truly believe that's going to be a decisive factor in e-commerce.
Yeah, you have explained it, expressed it here in this visual. It might be complex, but it's good to see that you have different kind of options to choose from, and not to just one. And so you can probably make your own trade-off. Do you want the cheapest or the most sustainable one?
Exactly. So yeah, this is quite a complex little schematic here, but I guess what it shows is that this is like the entire customer journey of someone that buys online, right? You from buying online until delivery. And traditionally, I think you see that it actually starts from that side. That nowadays it's the capabilities of the carrier that decide how your customer journey looks like.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to change.
Yeah.
I want the customer to be the driver of the delivery and not the other way around. So what we try to offer is in a checkout the different ways of delivery, stating also cool stuff about the delivery, like CO2 saved, what vehicle is used, you choose your time slot, all these different types of delivery, and then have your customer decide.
Yeah.
And I think the special thing what we can do with our platform, because we started out as the ship from store platform, that we can not only use your DC, but we can also use your stores or maybe local hubs. Everywhere where you have your product lying around, we can use to create the perfect last mile experience, because our platform takes that in mind.
Yeah, and I can imagine, a lot of brand manufacturers are looking direct to consumer. They want to get in touch of the consumer. Heineken has started Beerwolf as a platform for selling specialized beer, local beer. And finally, they have direct insights of the behavior of beer drinking consumers. So I can imagine that you also want to do something in a direct-to-consumer with brand manufacturers.
I think it's a really interesting development, of course, that brands are starting to realize that they can also go directly to the customers. And it's interesting. I will be interested to see how this plays out. If they're purely going to use like their from DC kind of structures, or maybe also use these brands are going to use their stock that they have lying around with local retailers to actually reach that end customer. Yeah. I think that will be the most powerful DTC model, which works well both ways. First of all, an awesome customer experience, but also helping your retailers that actually buy your product to reach the end customers. And I think it's going to be a huge development.
I think it's a great idea, because normally the brand manufacturers are going to the 3PL companies, the logistics service providers, but they get in the same old way that they, it's my way or the highway. I can only deliver it this way. Yeah. Whereas you have all kind of options, because you have different kind of logistic providers and carriers connected to your platform. So in that way, you can let the consumer choose. And maybe to wrap up, it's good to see how it looks like, because here you see on the slide what the consumer is seeing when he's ordering some stuff. And this is the environment of rituals. So maybe you can explain what the experience of the rituals consumer is buying online.
Yeah, so as I said, we focus very much on customer choice and customer experience, and that doesn't stop after the checkout. Because it always surprises me that you've done your shopping, and then you've become the customer actually of a different company. It's mostly the courier company, and then the carrier, and then you have that email either in probably orange or yellow, and then and that's the experience you end with. And I don't get that, right? I want to have like a full end-to-end experience of the retailer, and that's what we provide. So we do post-purchase messaging on request of the retailer or merchant, and we say, just give us the design that you want to show. And together we sit down and say, okay, what touch points in that delivery journey do you want to communicate on? So please choose the statuses. And then we can create a custom set of notifications. So this is what we did indeed for our customer rituals, with brand notifications fully in their design. Even the tracking pages can be like fully customized end to end to really get that retailer driven experience.
It's cool, and I think this is from a retailer, but also a manufacturing company who are creating their own cosmetics. and flavors and that kind of stuff. So this could also be applied to the major brand manufacturers.
Definitely.
Peter, thank you for joining me, and thank you for explaining. And it's good to see that you have you still know Innovate Supply Chain event. We'll do it again later this year, and I think we've got raving reviews from other people joining us, and it will be even bigger this year. Thanks for joining you, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to one of the final parts, and it's all about communication. And we know wolves, and we know wolves howling, but wolves are prone to have different kind of communication. So they can bark, whimpering, growling, and howling. And so there are different ways of communicating. And so that's why we show this. And there's a different kind of communication. When we talk about communication, a lot of people are thinking, there's inflation going on, there might be a recession ahead, maybe some bad news. But the good news is we're entering the sixth wave of Kondratyev. And when you look at this slide briefly, this economist from the 20s and 30s made some analysis. He started out, there are waves all through history, economic waves. So there have been already 5 macroeconomic waves. And the last one was about the introduction of the computer. It started out with the steam engine and so forth and on. You can read it. But basically, we are entering now the sixth wave of Kondratyev. And it means when it all starts, we will have 20 to 40 years of the next wave. And it's a normal division, so it's 20 years up. If we're really going to start this next wave, it will be 50 to 20 years of high growth economy. So that's the good news. The flip side of all this is, in the valleys between these waves, you will see some turmoil. You see some revolutions, wars going on, and that it's unfortunately actually happening right now. So you see conflicting cultures. And now that's entering in a stage of war in Europe. That's all part of what's happening when you look at from a long point of view, and you see this kind of waves happening. So the good news is that we are entering the sixth economic wave of Kondratyev, and we'll see a lot of growth and also a lot of opportunity, especially in the digitalization and with all kind of innovation. So that's the good news. The bad news is, we're entering in a world of complexity. So what the author and professor of Bath, Margaret Heffernan, is saying in her books about the future, the world is shifting from complicated, with clear cause and effects, to complex, with non-linear elements. So you see all kind of ripple effects, and it will be in a non-linear way. So we're getting into a complicated world. And the people in the audience who know system dynamics, the only way out of it is visualization. And what you see here is a visual of the Afghan world. NATO forces created this visualization of all kind of interconnections between organizations and tribes in Afghanistan, and to see, okay, what will happen if we do this? And what will happen if we do that? So basically, NATO created this visual to explain what could be done, what they shouldn't do, what would be a terrible thing to do, with a lot of unforeseen consequences. And by visualization, they could map out this consequences to make it foreseeable. So this is what NATO forces has done, and what we've seen earlier. This scenarios, this military strategic thinking is very important. It's now also entering the world of business and supply chain. So what we did, last fall, we created a visualization of an ecosystem. In May, June last year, McKinsey was starting to write about business ecosystem, and Gartner was writing about supply chain ecosystem. And I was thinking, okay, fine, but how does an ecosystem look like in a business world? So I Googled, not on wording, but on pictures. And unfortunately, I didn't find anything useful. So, there were no clear pictures or visualization of ecosystem. So I decided we do it ourselves. So we created our own visualization of a complex ecosystem in business, a supply chain. So you see it here. This is the visualization we created last fall. But to explain it, what it is, I will go to the other side of the studio and I will tell you how to read this visualization. So bear me and I will explain it in the other part of the studio. Over the past few years, the word ecosystem has repeatedly cropped up in a business and supply chain context. The traditional supply chain was linear. Products went from ingredient suppliers to factories, to distribution centers or wholesale companies, to retail storerooms, and then onto the shelves of the supermarkets, where consumers bought the groceries and took them back home. And now the supply chain increasingly ends directly at the consumer's front door. Brand manufacturers are coming under increasing pressure from various stakeholders, like banks and investors, social media, government, and NGOs, to operate more sustainably. Traditional linear supply chains have evolved into intricate networks of companies working in partnership with varying flows of goods. Information from sales and data providers like Nielsen and, of course, capital. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically altered the worldwide retail and consumer packaged goods market, with dark stores and flash delivery to different types of consumers. With the world now emerging from lockdown, the household products market has not only reached a tipping point, but also the point of no return. Consumers who experimented with buying such goods online have become accustomed to the newfound convenience from e-commerce companies like Amazon and to-go shops. Just as in the natural world, these supply chain ecosystems must become increasingly circular in the context of sustainability, with the help of recycling companies, supplying chemical companies, and other suppliers of rubber, plastics, and packaging. In view of the need to use more organic raw materials, recycle more packaging, and use less water and more renewable energy, the supply chain ecosystem for household products and other consumer goods is changing rapidly. And all the participants in that ecosystem will need to adapt, digitalize, and collaborate. So hopefully with this explanation you'll better understand what this ecosystem looks like and how to use it. And when you have this ecosystem mapped out, you have a better conversation among your colleagues, among your investors, your partners, upstream suppliers, your distribution channels. So basically, this whole ecosystem visualization will help you, to target where to start and where you want to start to digitalize your supply chain and how to start your circular ecosystems. All right. So next, we talk about engagement. And you see a picture of a wolf and a raven. And you might not know it, but ravens and wolves are collaborating, hunting prey. So when you are looking for wolves, you have to look in the air and look for ravens. Why? Ravens are looking for prey and wolves will follow. Basically, ravens and wolves are collaborating, and they're exchanging also kind of communication with the vocal ways like howling to each other. So we are a publishing company, supply chain media, so we do a lot about engagement and publications. So basically we want to talk about how we do that. With me I have Nicole. Nicole is my colleague, responsible for marketing and also for business development. And Nicole, you're going to explain what we have doing on the publication and what the supply chain people are reading.
Yes, I want to try to align how people consume our content and how they do it. So what types of content do they consume and where do they consume it?
Okay, yeah, maybe in this slide we have an overview and maybe you can explain it. What are they reading? What is the top 10 of content supply chain professionals have been read last year?
Yeah, we have seen in the past 60 minutes or so that we have some different ways of visualization complex matter. The ecosystem that you just explained is one visualization that we created. but we have co-created 51 more in 2022. And to have a better understanding of what supply chain professionals do with it, we made a top 10 list of the best downloaded pieces of content. And you see it in the sheet. And it speaks for itself that the key topics like sustainability, digitalization, and scenario building are downloaded more than others. But what we also clearly see in this list is that visualizations score way above average compared to white papers or any other written text.
So basically the visualization help to get a better grasp of a certain topic, and that's the reason why it's better read than normal text, plain text.
Definitely, definitely. And this is all available on the website of Supply Chain Movement as gated content.
Yeah.
And all the gated content together that we have created in 2022 was downloaded by over 11,000 supply chain professionals all over the world.
Yeah, and it's good to know. And I also experienced that some years ago. I had a conversation with a VP supply chain at L'Oreal, and she showed me a whole stack of downloaded checklists, mind maps, and roadmaps. And she said we are downloading each kind of topic, what you have been published as a first starter of a project. And so, you know, and then we scribble stuff around, and then we scan it, and we have a Kickstarter to have an early start and a quicker start of our project. And maybe you can also explain where this content has been read all over the world.
Yeah, like I said, it's downloaded on our international website of Supply Chain Movement. And our editorial team that is creating or co-creating all this content has a focus on the European supply chain, but we definitely see that the European supply chain provides a blueprint for supply chains all around the world. And especially in 2020, when the lockdowns during the pandemic happened, and now also with the Russian invasion in Ukraine, we see that our audience is not just based in Europe anymore, but also in APAC and in the Americas. So the geographical locations of our downloads are now, global actually.
And if you look at the slide, you know, I think that the majority is Western Europe, I would say, and US and Canada, and the rest is APAC and Australia, something like that.
Yeah, and I think it also shows that our organization is based in the Netherlands, so that explains for us that our biggest audience is in the Netherlands as well. We have an exclusively publication for Dutch audience in the Dutch language, so we have a better brand awareness here in the Netherlands than in other locations.
And then personally, I claim that the Dutch in supply chain are very well positioned because they speak English and they have a good knowledge of supply chain. And also that's the reason why I see a lot of Dutch expats all around the world in supply chain functions in a higher level. So that's also what I see. Of course, you know, what we see in the last 2 years, huge growth of online viewers and readers on our channels, probably because of the lockdown. But maybe you can tell me something about print. Is print still alive, or what's the status of print?
Yeah, I think our viewers now are both supply chain professionals as well as marketeers from supply chain vendors and supply chain vendors and themselves also here in the studio. And I'm having daily conversation with both ends of the table, so as well the practitioners as the vendors. And a lot of the supply chain directors and managers that I talk with, they read our printed magazine. And in another conversation with supply chain vendors, they ask me all the time, is print dead? But I would definitely say print is not dead, and neither is print advertising. And what I try to do, preparing for this conversation that we have, is look for research, if there is any supporting research, and there's a lot, and that surprised me. So yeah, I'm more confident to say that the print isn't dead, and print advertising should definitely be a part of the marketing mix. And I found an interesting research of finances online, and I have to check the numbers so I state them right. But they did a research about reading behavior of printing ads versus digital ads. And they saw that print ads require 21% less cognitive effort to process, and they generate 77% brand recall over only 46% brand recall of digital ads. So that's a really significant differ. And in our own research, we found that 80% of marketeers at supply chain vendors, they try to get more brand recognition through digital ads, mostly on Google advertising and LinkedIn advertising. And I found in another research of Ubiquity, who's an independent data analysis on media investment, that by doing so, those marketeers are still funding spammy websites and disinformation. And in a time where we all are calling fake news, that was really surprising to me. And Ubiquity found in that research, and I will quote them, the websites that are made for advertising can not only be potentially an undesirable environment for your ads, but they are also more likely to advertising fraud. They give you the illusion of reach when it's not actual reach, and their questionable impressions of the website are potentially non-human. So yeah, as a marketeer, I was quite surprised by that we are still funding websites like those. So yeah, even though we see a very increase in the investments of online advertising, compared to 2020, we luckily see an increase of advertisement in print magazines again.
Yeah, and I also personally see some website with a lot of Google ads, and it's it's quite disturbing to watch and to go through, and maybe that is also adding to the online fatigue. And that's also explaining why people more and more want to pick up a book or a magazine in print and read it at home, especially. And of course, during lockdown, we saw a shift from magazines being sent to the office to their homes, and that also raised a lot of subscriptions on a home-based matter. And on the other hand, we see a shift from online reading more to an online reading, and that's also the reason why we experimented with making supply chain movement available as a PDF downloadable. And you see that a lot of people are still printing it because then they can read it way better. Next, what is it about the reading behavior, print versus online?
Yes, because the numbers that we spoke about so far are just regarding advertising, so visuals. And we haven't talked about written content yet. And of course, a lot of people in general struggle with creating content themselves. What is the issue that you really want to talk about? And when we create content, we mostly do it in written form. So the same research of Finances Online that I quoted before found in that same research that people who read printed publications spend over 20 minutes reading that, compared to less than 5 minutes reading time for online digital news sites. So we process more and we process it more easily. So that's a big argument to have in mind when you are printing written content. And if you are a supply chain marketeer, I would definitely say that print should be in your marketing mix, taking all these statements into consideration, and combine it, of course, with digital ads.
Yeah. And as editor-in-chief and publisher of Supply Chain Movement, I totally agree that longer articles, say 6 pages, is hardly being read online. And I see that people want these articles because they want their deep knowledge and they want a better explanation than a fluffy, superficial stuff online. So that's why we still are publishing 6 or 8 pages as article in a magazine, but not online. And finally, how do supply chain vendors get in contact with their audience, with the supply chain professionals?
Yeah, they do it in different ways, and we have those questions a lot, actually daily. How do I get more leads? But I think it's similar to what Erik just explained. You first start crawling before you start running. So you first have in your marketing AIDA model, start with awareness, then interest, and then desire before you can get into lead generation. So taking the assumption that you have done the steps before, you are ready for action, and you have to know where do your target audience drop their contact details. How do I get in touch with supply chain practitioners? And in our research that we did by ourselves among supply chain marketeers, we see a decrease of digital events, and we see an increase in physical events. And we also see that the marketeers invest in gated content, so a white paper or visualization, where the supply chain practitioners need to put in their contact details. And 60% of those marketeers, they invest in Google Ads and LinkedIn advertising for lead generation. And that's surprising, I think. And to those, I would definitely recommend to read the research of Finances Online, because in conclusion, they say that digital campaigns are 400% more effective when combining them with print advertising.
And what I also see that, when we are publishing gated content like co-created mind maps or checklists on our website, it's way more effective than when it's been published at the own site where we created with. Why? Because supply chain movement provides a more independent environment, and people expect what to get from us in co-creation with a lot of partners. So that's also something to remind. And also what I read from the financials from Facebook and Google, they are expecting a decrease in spending on Google and LinkedIn ads because of market uncertainty, and also about the higher cost of the Google AdWords and LinkedIn campaigns. Finally, about the on-location event. So what's happening on that event business side?
Yeah, we saw in our own research, and that was kind of what we have expected, that the digital conferences are decreasing and the physical events are increasing again, but that was in comparison to 2020, where we had the lockdowns and the pandemic. But what was interesting to see is that the number of events we are attending to now are decreasing, meaning, in my opinion, we are cherry picking. We are more critically thinking about, is it worth my time? Is it worth my money? Is it worth the environment to attend an event to in person? So I think that's the reason why we are attending less events than we did before.
So yeah, Supply Chain Media, we are going to less events with our own booth and with that kind of thing. And also as a trend watcher, I'm spending less time abroad going to a conference like pre-COVID. But I think also both the vendors and the professionals are aware that some things could be done online with Zoom meetings and broadcasts like this. So that's a new hybrid world. But then again, people want to rejoin and get together face to face again. Okay, thanks for your explanation. There will be more data available online. But the final part is, do the marketeers of supply chain vendors have a strategy, a sound strategy?
Yeah, we asked that in the research as well, because we have a lot of conversation with marketeers. They all want more leads, and no matter how many leads they get, they always want more. The other side, the practitioners, they already have a lot of knowledge. They keep downloading a lot of content, but they still need more knowledge to optimize their supply chains. So in the question, what hurdles are there and how do you need to improve? What are the reasons you are not achieving what you want to achieve right now? We saw some different arguments. One of them, and a lot of marketeers answered that, was that they had no sound marketing strategy. It was also mentioned a lot that there was insufficient budget for marketing, and also a lot of marketeers blaming sales for insufficient following up of sales qualified leads. On the other side of the table, I think that supply chain professionals are more busy than ever with their daily business, so they have less time to talk to vendors. And I think overall, all the people really suffer from a serious information overload. And that comes back, I think, full cycle where we started. I think all marketeers should also go back to the drawing board now in a post-pandemic world and start visualizing all the channels, all the platforms we use and how they interact with each other to find the best way to reach the supply chain practitioners.
And still, I totally agree with what you're saying in the research. I still say, when you want to get a brain position, say you want to have, you want to create a brain position about store shippers. To get a neural path in your brain, you need to have heard the story about store shippers at least 6 or 7 times in different ways, in different stages, and in different manners to get it stick in your brain to such extent that you can explain to your colleague why you have to look into the proposition of store shippers. So I have to explain again and again that bombarding the same message over and over again is not enough. You have to have 6, 7 contact points in different ways, in different manners, and hopefully with some visualization, because a picture says more than 1,000 words. So that's the reason why you have to come up with a sound strategy and map it out and come with some clear follow-up. Thanks for your explanation, and it's time to wrap up. So we explained a lot, and finally, we get in the final phase. Tomorrow, when you go back to work, you have to get in action, and the wolves all know when they are hunting what is their role, hunting a prey, what kind of role you do, and it's all by evolution that they know what to do. So that's in the world of wolves. In the world of humans, it's different. So like I said, the only way to get out of this complex world, to show what you should be doing and to explain it to others, to your colleagues, to your other partners in the supply chain, the only way out is by visualization. So my recommendation is, I've explained it briefly myself, but create this visualization not of a linear supply chain, but a complex ecosystem with all the lines, with all the information, the goods of flow, the information flows, and take in mind the major stakeholders of your ecosystem. And think like a circular ecosystem, and then you will find a way, and you'll find the choking points and the starting points of your initiatives. And I'm totally convinced that if you create this kind of ecosystems with shareholders, investment funds, and you name it, then you will get a better conversation, and you need visualization, and that's the only way out. And next, of course, you have to meet new people. You have to meet new players, scale-ups like store shippers and the likes. So based on that, we have our agenda that will be online. We have a whole range of webinars coming up every Wednesday with all the elements and all the topics we have discussed this afternoon will be mentioned and discussed in depth, also with practitioners at the table. And that will be online every Wednesday. But one of the 2 major events is our Innovate Supply Chain event. And like Peter said, it was one of the best events, the coolest events on supply chain in Europe. And I have also some statements from other supply chain VPs confirming that. So on May 11th, we will have again our Innovate Supply Chain event with a lot of startups, a lot of scale-ups, a real contest with short pitches with a lot of practitioners, and also the former commander-in-chief of NATO in Afghanistan, Martijn Lofvers, who was a leader of more than 40,000 soldiers with a huge complex environment, and he will explain way better than I can, and very convincingly during our Innovate event in May on the 11th. And next, we'll talk also in depth on our SAP Flavor Day. So it's about flavors of S&OP. Like mentioned by Jeroen Schepers and Eric Dix, there are many flavors in supply chain planning, in IBP, S&OP, S&OE, and we'll address this topic in our S&OP Flavor Day on November 15th. So that's it about me, about our events and our plans with our team. I would say, we talk about wolves, and Leon Trotsky, he said, when one runs with the wolves, one must howl with the pack. So, but you have to be aware what's all behind it, what's been howling about, and I hope that you have a better knowledge and a better ammunition of what's happening in the world. So with this, I would like to wrap up, and thank you for listening in, and I hope to see you again, hopefully on location, or at the Innovate event in May, or at our S&OP Flavor Day. If not, you can also watch our webinars online, and you can be in contact, even in a Zoom meeting afterwards. We're going to have a direct conversation with each other. So thanks for listening in. Thank you for all our partners here at the studio, and I hope you have a successful business. I should say, I wish you good luck. But the guru, Ella Goldratt, writer of The Goal, has also written the book, It's No Luck. And he's right. It's not about luck. It's about strategy and making it work by clear execution. Thank you for now, and see you later. Bye-bye.